Urgent, topical, and timely. Power Breakfast with Tessa Dooms, 6 to 9 a.m.
This morning we cover a news story that has been bubbling under the surface for a few days. The Cradock Four inquest is now going to be going ahead full steam, and we want to look into that this morning. On the line with us, we have the son of Fort Calata, who is one of the Cradock Four, Lukhanyo Calata. Lukhanyo, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Thank you for coming into Power Breakfast. How do you feel about the way in which this has proceeded now that the High Court in Gqeberha has ruled that the inquest into the murders must continue?
Tessa Dooms, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah. Look, we're delighted, Tessa, I think, as the families, that the reopened inquest is now finally underway. It's a step closer for us to truth, justice, and hopefully healing. And it was such a surreal feeling to have been sitting in court yesterday. For the judge to get proceedings underway, to have our advocate speak on the family's behalf, because now we know that for the first time in 31 years. A court in democratic South Africa is finally hearing the matter into the murders of my father and his comrades. And it takes us a step closer to justice. And
this is really an extension, I feel, of what the TRC was meant to do and be. And I always felt that the TRC was such a limited forum for the meting out of justice. How important is it for you to get these full details and perhaps even understand how justice can be found even today?
Very important, Tessa. Very important. What we're doing right now should have been done in the first 10 years of our democracy.
Yeah.
It should have been dealt with, allowed us as the families to, start the process of closure, start the process of healing. Then most of the perpetrators were still alive. They would have been prosecuted, and we would have received justice in its most natural form, in terms of somebody would have been held accountable for taking our fathers away from us. But that unfortunately didn't happen due to political reasons and political interference. So, and it's a shame, because just last week the president, Cyril Ramaphosa, announced this commission of inquiry, and that commission, chaired by Justice Sisi Kampempe, now has to go and basically try and determine why the recommendations of the TRC were never followed up on and were never implemented. Imagine if it had, Tessa. We would be living in a different South Africa today.
TRC 2.0, a friend of mine, Lukhanyo Calata, often says that we talk about reconciliation, but that assumes at some point we were reconciled. It assumes at some point that we did, we were side by side as society, and then somehow there was a rupture. But the truth is that it's not even about reconciliation at this point. It starts with accountability. There cannot be any justice without truth. There cannot be any peace without accountability. And I think that is what your family is calling for, not only in the case of the Cradock Four, but of course, as you said, the president now giving this a wider ambit, because many of the people who fought for this liberation and lost life and limb, their family members are here in this society right now, direct family members like yours. And so I do think these are important proceedings. How do you see this unfolding? Is there a time frame that has been set for this? And as society, how do we follow these proceedings?
Yeah. All right. Well, so this first, if I can call it part A of the inquest, Tessa, is only going to run up until Thursday next week. And it's basically to allow, obviously, the inquest to get underway. But in part A, us as the families will testify. So, today we're going to an in-local inspection in Cradock. Going to the Gqeberha house that was surveilled by the security branch officers. And then we'll go and visit the crime scenes where the bodies and the remains of the Cradock Four were recovered closer to Gqeberha. And then I think from tomorrow afternoon onwards, we will give the first testimonies. I'll be going first, and then I'll be followed by the other families, my mother, my sisters, the Mhlawuling family, the Mkhonto family, and the Goniwe family. And then that will run up until next week, Thursday. And then the court will probably adjourn, obviously, to allow, the persons of interest who don't yet have their legal funding sorted out to get that matter out of the way. And that includes someone like General Joffel van der Westhuizen,
Yes.
who, for instance, was the one that dictated the military signal calling for the permanent removal of my father and his comrades. Lastly, Tessa, I just want to say that the Foundation for Human Rights has really been outstanding, and they've assisted us, with providing a live stream of the court's session, and that's available on the Foundation's YouTube page or channel.
And then let's just go into this question about Van der Westhuizen. What is the thing that is holding back his testimony from coming to the fore? Because it's a crucial reason why this inquest even goes ahead right now.
So the reasons that the way that we understand them, Tessa, is the South African National Defence Force is basically refusing to fund his
legal fees.
Defense. Yes, his legal fees, because they're saying that Van der Westhuizen acted beyond the scope of his job at the time.
Yeah.
So they can't pay for it, because by paying for his legal fees, it's almost as if they are condoning what he had done. But it's just I don't actually understand why why this government is behaving in this manner. Because what it does is it just delays the process. Van der Westhuizen did what he did because he was employed by the
then government.
Defense, yes, by the then government, the defense force. Whether or not he acted, but we know that he didn't act on his own, right? So the state, ANC, and the government of national unity should approve. I mean, I know it's unfair, but they should approve his legal fees so that we as the families can get on with this business, so that, we don't get held up. The Cradock Four matter has been held up for 40 years, Tessa.
Yeah.
40 years. So we would like to get it to a close, but obviously these persons of interest, including Van der Westhuizen, they're just using this again as another stalling tactic, another Stalingrad. And I'm very sad to say they are assisted in this instance by the National Defence Force that's refusing, obviously, to then cover their legal fees.
So, Lukhanyo, you are making an appeal really to government and the Defence Force to pay for these legal fees so that it does not stand as an impediment or an excuse, as it were, in this instance for Van der Westhuizen to take the stand and give the information. Why is the court allowing him to evade being on the stand based on this legal fee issue?
Look, I don't, Tessa. I'm not sure if the court can make the order. I'm sure the court could make the order. And I do believe that at one point the court had actually ordered that, for the state to pay. I don't quite know what happened in that sense. I think if we were to follow up with our lawyers, they would be able to give you a much better explanation in that regard. But yes, the appeal is there, and also it's not a lot of money, considering the money that actually gets stolen. In our government.
In this country, yeah.
In this country. So if that money was put to good use to, pay for the families, cover their legal fees, and cover the legal fees of the persons of interest, because in that way you are then you're paving the way for the families to be able to get to justice a lot sooner.
Well, all the best for your testimony in the next few days, Lukhanyo. Strength to yourself and your family as you go through this process. And we do hope that justice finally finds you and your families, albeit 40 years later. That's Lukhanyo Calata, son of Fort Calata, one of the Cradock Four.